There can be nothing more fun than a good scare on Halloween. I love Halloween. That's why I write Halloween stories. Now, the next story I'm going to read you talks about Imelda. And there's nothing more scary than a woman whose love has been unrequited or been interfered by other women. So let's get to the story, shall we? Halloween. Ghosts, goblins, demons, and devils. A time of trickery and treachery. Not your moment of sunshine nor a second of romantic effusions. Soft gauze on fine light falling on the morning dew, perched on the perfect flower, is not the stuff of Halloween dreams. A witch's hat, fat orange pumpkin, or a dancing skeleton are the decorations lining the thoughts of Halloween. A naughty laugh, a desperate giggle, even a shrieking scream of terror fill the sounds of Halloween. And Halloween night, the stuff of goosebumps, dread and fright. This is my time of year. But what brings these terrors to the night? Halloween doesn't exist in a vacuum. A congress of goblins passing the night is of no consequence if all are goblins. A witch's spell carries no worries as a common occurrence endured by all. It is the argument of good against evil which boils the cauldron of the season. The never-ending battle of black versus white gains a balance towards the black on this blasphemous of days. It is here in the roiling power of evil that Halloween thrives, and casts shadows that may live long past the tolling of the midnight bell, even past the evil of the powerful witch's hour. I enjoy Halloween. Not the terrible, horrible, blood-soaked stain that it can become, but I like the naughtiness of it. The masks that hide the identity of the proper, the straight-laced and the honorable, the masks which permit the hidden vamps, tramps, and beasts to come forth and release the pent-up of frustrations of everyday life. We are of which we are made. If we don't relieve the pressure now and again, we, like the cooker, will explode. Plus, watching good people trying to be bad can be kind of funny. But evil does take advantage of the good, especially on Halloween, so one must be wary. Never more so than when the good is the heart, given freely to love against the wishes of evil. The curse of Imelda is evidence of the consequences of forbidden love. The curse is well known in these parts. Young women shy from it, at least those with the care and sense. Others have been known to challenge the mystical. Skeptical and dismissive of powers that are unseen and undefined, having influence on their lives, only to be left saddened and empty in their hearts. Tears the only comfort until such time as a flower, freely given in their name, is laid in the pool of sorrow. It is a terror not to be forgotten that which you cannot see has such power over your life. It is also a lesson in love. I had witnessed the effects of Imelda's curse. I also had known the story before the tragic event. Imelda was a witch in the late 1600s. She was young and beautiful with dark raven hair, fair skin, deep dark eyes, full lips, and a figure afforded the nubile and sweet. Her age placed her in her late teens, early 20s. Like most women of her age, she enjoyed the flirt, the dance of love, and the tease of young men's attentions. Her laugh was gentle and free. It bounced off the flowers, trees, and hollows around her home. She'd fallen in and out of love many times since she turned of age. She was no stranger to heartache or to heat of desire. She was, however, still a witch. She had known she was a witch since her second year. She was raised by her mother, aunts, and grandmother. And all witches, no males, no warlocks, were present in her formative years. None were wanted. Each of those that raised her had known deep love in their lives, and the anguish of terrible heartache and a lover's betrayal. Each had been scorched in those relationships by deceitful men who had held their hearts. They had drawn in on themselves and lived apart, hating all men indiscriminately. Men had become nothing more than playthings to fill momentary desires or temporary needs. Love had become a terror to be avoided at all costs. The women had become warped and ugly in their souls because of this hatred. But, unlike the stories passed in campfires, none of her family were plain, ugly, or wart-infested. They remained, without incantation or craft, beautiful embodiments of womanhood throughout their lives. This was their blessing and their curse, as few women in the nearby village that had observed the passage of time and years could look upon them without envy and even anger. Like the mythical sirens, more than one of their men had been tempted and succumbed to a visit to their home. Their desire to lay in the bosom of witch's beauty and relive a faded youth, even for a moment, proved too overwhelming to most men. The results of such visits inevitably leading to deep pain, heartache, and sorrow. The respites expected overwhelmed by the witch's hatred and distrust of the male sex. Over the years, not one of Imelda's clan ever took a man for more than their own use. Their own twisted souls refused every advance, fraudulent or sincere. Family heirlooms, cash, and cattle were often bartered for the want of a favor. Promises, pledges, and vows were spoken, but no favor was ever given to any man save to advance the witch's desires. The deep hurt from the earlier lost loves proved too profound for healing or for forgiving. Eventually their hearts had hardened in the cure, losing all sense of love. They became cold, distant, and never trusted again. It was in this hatred of the opposite sex that Imelda grew to be the beautiful woman she had become. Her heart had not broken despite lost first loves and agonizing unrequited love. She had kept her love of life and men intact despite the anger of her family. That was when she met Jeremy. Jeremy had found himself in a tree deep in the woods. It had been a long day walking the old dirt roads. Still, there was 2 more days to travel before he was home. A single man, blonde hair with deep blue eyes that stole your soul when he looked at you. He was solid from hard work in the fields. His shoulders were broad and his hands were strong, but he could hold a butterfly in their palms and never make it quiver. Hard lessons had taught him when sleeping in the woods to find a tall branch to lay your head. Strange beasts and nasty predators had less to bother in the arms of the woods. It was in this position, half asleep, half awake, when he first saw the flicker of light. His eyes focused. A forest fire was no place for a single man in the woods. His alarm fell and his interest peaked when he saw it was nothing more than a bonfire set for a small gathering. He wondered who would be out this late at night. Not sure of their strength and less sure of their intent, he chose to remain silent and keep his own counsel. He just waited and watched. The combination of the full moon and roaring fire gave him a clear view of those in attendance. It was evident early on this would be a gathering of women. Only women. No men were evident. None seemed invited. The whole thing began eerily enough. The women formed a silent ring around the fire. Dressed in loose robes that hid their faces, they neither quivered or shook. Their stillness reminded him of silent statues. Then a murmur could be heard. Slowly building, it came to his ears as a chant. Still, no woman moved. An owl hooted. Birds took flight. A small wind began to feather the robes of the gathering, turning to the silent statues into visions of haunting ghosts. It grew in intensity and seemed to encompass the wood in which they stood. A force, a powerful force, grew around them and the fire. It at once seemed to protect and repel. The force grew as a circle, expanding further and further into the surrounding wood until it encompassed Jeremy himself. Inside its embrace, Jeremy felt protected. He neither worried nor fretted. He just waited and watched. Suddenly, as if on cue, the fire roared into a greater life. Its flame whooshed against the night sky, turning night into day for those gathered around the fire. Then, on a signal no one but they heard or understood, each woman dropped her robes. To Jeremy's total surprise, underneath these haunting robes, the women were naked. Completely, utterly naked. Not a stitch of clothing touched their bodies. That which they wore lay at their feet, and they nonchalantly kicked that away as well. Jeremy's focus turned in intensity. Naked women were no small matter for a man, let alone one living in the late 1600s. He held his breath as he watched them sway in place, arms raised in supplication to some unknown entity. They stood and swayed and chanted. Then they began to dance. A dance that encircled the fire and built in intensity. Their hair swept back and forth across their faces or across their backs at each new step. Their eyes, when he could see them, appeared glazed over as if in grasp of some unseen power. Jeremy marveled at their forms. Everyone, the most advanced to the neophyte, seemed perfection. Having seen little of the female form, but his own sister and mother on occasion cooling in their undergarments at a nearby stream, this vision was extraordinary. Jeremy's longing burned as he watched. He barely could contain himself. But he remained still. He knew this was a rare event he would not likely visit again. He wanted to remember it all. His eyes danced over each and every form before him until he found and focused on Imelda. She was, to him, perfection. He watched and did not notice the fire fail and the chanting stop. The dancing ended as the fire faded, and the woman walked the circle where they had danced. They gathered their wits and then their robes. It was as she kneeled down to get her robes that Imelda looked up and stared at the tree where Jeremy rested. Her eyes snapped to his, and she smiled. Jeremy's mind went blank. Imelda was smiling over Jeremy as his eyes opened. She had a light giggle as he awoke. Morning, and he was on the forest floor. Jeremy had no idea how he'd gotten there, but the images of the night were fresh and burned into his memory. Jeremy was also naked. He sat upright and covered himself with his errant clothing. Imelda just laughed. What happened? Jeremy stuttered his embarrassment. He had never been naked with a woman since his birth. Well, as I recall, you spent a good portion of last evening watching me dance nude. So I felt turnabout was fair play. I watched you sleep naked on the forest floor. Imelda's sparkling laughter filled the forest, taking Jeremy's embarrassment with it. To Imelda's surprise, Jeremy stood up. His solid, muscular body enlarged and dominant on full view for her pleasure. A wickedly naughty smile stretched across his lips as he reached down to help her stand. Fair is fair, my lady. I apologize for my intrusion last night. It was not intentional. Please forgive me. But the vision was magnificent. I could not look away. Jeremy held her close, and his blue eyes burned into her dark ones. She returned the look, and with little effort dropped her gown on the dirt at her feet. The desire was deep, strong, and powerful. They fell in love on the forest floor, deeply in love, a pure love that is reserved for only a few. Jeremy confessed his need to return home and invited her to join him. Imelda refused. She was concerned for his safety. Her mother, aunts, and grandmother would forbid this love. They would hex him, harm him, and banish him. She told Jeremy she would wait for his return. He vowed to return in 5 days on Halloween night itself. He'd held her, gave her a kiss, and hurried on his way to complete his promise. Imelda counted the minutes, hours, and days until Jeremy was to return. Her smile belied her love. Her actions belied her anxiousness. The stories of her mother's and aunt's betrayals haunted her visions and her dreams. She trusted Jeremy would return. She worried he wouldn't. The day finally arrived and evening fell. Imelda walked cautiously toward the wood where they consummated their love. Tears were on the edge of each eye. She feared he wouldn't be there, and evenly afraid that he would. Imelda turned the corner on the dirt path to the tree that would forever be theirs. Jeremy stood strong underneath, the sun's evening rays bathing him in a glow of light. His chest was bare and his smile for his Imelda large. Imelda ran to him. She reached to gather him in her arms, but she was barred. Vines had dropped from the tree and grabbed her arms. Jeremy ran to help, but he was thrown to the ground. It felt as if a large hand had grabbed him and forced him down. He tried to rise, but was again thwarted. Imelda looked around and saw her coven emerge from the forest. She screamed her frustration. She pleaded with them. She begged them, but their hearts were too hardened. To teach her a lesson, to harden her heart, the coven cast a spell. Imelda watched in horror as her Jeremy was turned into a boulder, a stone to reside forever alone in the forest, a monument to the hard, uncaring hearts of men. It was too much. Imelda exploded, her powers enhanced by her youth, her purity of soul, and her love. The forest retreated in fear, and she found her arms free. In a flash of anger and fire, she cursed her coven into the very thing with which they burdened her love. Small stone obelisks standing in a circle around her beloved Jeremy, forever witness to their wickedness and hate. In her final act of love, Imelda cursed herself as well. She placed herself as a tree in the forest, a weeping willow hanging its loving branches in protection over her beloved Jeremy. And she cursed any woman that would come to her Jeremy on Halloween with naught but love in their hearts. Charlatans, spinsters, liars, and deceivers would be cursed to live in their misery without love until a flower freely given was placed in the pool of sorrow. Whoa, she was mad.